Welcome back, everybody, to Weather Animations. Today, we investigate the 2007 Atlantic hurricane season, where 17 tropical depressions formed. 15 of those reached tropical storm status, 6 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. This season overall was significantly busier and more fatal than the previous season, with 478 total fatalities and over $3 billion in damages. Sit back and relax as this 2007 Atlantic hurricane season unfolds from beginning to end. We begin this Atlantic hurricane season with subtropical storm Andrea. Andrea formed off the coast of North Carolina and reached hurricane status, even though it's a subtropical storm. Interesting. However, it did meander near the coast of Florida for a little while before dissipating and moving off towards the east. Really not too much to speak of with this storm, but it is rather interesting, its formation and path through the Atlantic Ocean. Next up, we have Tropical Storm Barry. Barry formed off the Yucatan Peninsula, and it did not do too much. It did make landfall, though, in Florida, and just barely a tropical storm right before landfall. And then, what is this? Riding along the coast of the Carolinas and up towards the northeast, where it again made landfall in Rhode Island? That's interesting. Moving on, we have Tropical Storm Chantel. Chantel formed near Bermuda, because that's really the closest island we had there. A pass towards Newfoundland where it sped off really quickly. And there's not too much to speak of there. It gets close to the island of Iceland as a obviously mid-latitude cyclone at this point. We're at 60 degrees north. And not much more to say there. Next is our most impressive hurricane of the season, Hurricane Dean. Yes, Category 5 hurricane. Maximum wind speeds 175 miles an hour. Minimum central pressure 905 millibars. Dean just basically tracked westward in the tropical Atlantic, of course, and there we can see its Hurricane 5 status in that pink color there. It remained a major hurricane for quite some time before making landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 5 hurricane, emerging at the other side as still a hurricane and making landfall in Mexico again as a hurricane. Dean was very destructive. Moving on, we have Tropical Storm Erin, which formed in the Gulf of Mexico, making a path towards the north and west, where it made landfall in Texas as a tropical depression, and now here we just see it meandering around the state of Texas and Oklahoma, where nothing much occurred there. Next up is our next major hurricane of the season, Felix, which was also a Category 5 hurricane with maximum wind speeds at 175 miles an hour. The minimum central pressure was up, though, from the previous major hurricane at 929 millibars. Did go ahead and made landfall there as a major hurricane in Central America, where it just kind of spent the rest of its time. Again, another very destructive storm this season. Moving on, we have Tropical Storm Gabrielle. Gabrielle made landfall in the Cape of North Carolina and then sped off towards the north and east. Next up, we have Tropical Storm Ingrid. Ingrid is not much to speak of here. It just kind of took its time to cross the open waters of the Atlantic, making a close approach to the Antilles Islands here is not much other than a tropical depression, or even perhaps an open wave. Next is Hurricane Humberto, which formed rather quickly, becoming a hurricane, making landfall in far eastern Texas as a Category 1 hurricane, maximum wind speed 90 miles an hour. Next up, Tropical Depression 10, not much there. Next up, Tropical Storm Jerry. Jerry was also short-lived, basically barely a tropical storm. And then moving on, we have Hurricane Karen. We just blew through some names there, but now Hurricane Karen lasted for a couple days here. Peak intensity, just barely hurricane status at 75 miles an hour. We can see that in the yellow coloring there. And it remained a tropical storm for pretty much the rest of its lifetime there. Next up, we have Hurricane Lorenzo, which formed in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico, meandered for a little while, then picked a trajectory off towards the west, where it made landfall in Mexico. Moving on, we have Tropical Storm Melissa. Melissa, we can talk a little bit about here, even though there's nothing to talk about. It was barely a tropical storm with maximum wind speed 40 miles an hour. Minimum central pressure was only 1,005 millibars. And for the rest of Melissa's lifetime, she kind of just didn't do much. We'll consider her an open wave at this time. Maximum wind speed was only 25 knots here, so right around 30 miles an hour. And it just kind of meandered towards the north and west. Next, Tropical Depression 15, which again lasted for quite some time, not doing much of anything. I would impart this probably on some shear that the storms were encountering around this time, as Melissa did occur a couple weeks earlier. However, in the central Atlantic here, shear is definitely going to be an issue. Moving on, Noel. Noel was the next hurricane of the season. Its path is rather interesting. Tries to go towards the north and west. Then it dips towards the south and west, where it kind of brought some unsettled weather to Puerto Rico there. And then it decided to dart towards the north and west yet again. And it finally decides it wants to be a tropical storm at this time and making landfall on the island of Hispaniola. And then Cuba is its next target, as it made another weird turn. And then off into the Atlantic again, where the Bahamas are the next threat for the storm. And then it finally becomes a hurricane as it passes the islands of the Bahamas and speeds off towards the northeast, we'll call it, where it makes landfall in Nova Scotia as a post-tropical storm at this time. Next, we have our final storm of the season, Tropical Storm Olga. Olga did not do too much, as it was a very late season storm. It did make landfall in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, just basically bringing unsettled weather to the islands with some windy conditions. It then just kind of meanders towards the west, where it then turns northward as it interacts with an upper level low and off towards the north and east. That's it for this season, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more videos like this, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the future uploads that I make tracking these hurricane seasons. So with that, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.